I moved to a small town a few months ago. I thought living above a coffee shop would be cozy. It was winter, and I needed peace after a tough breakup. At first everything felt fine. I settled in with some tea one snowy night. The flakes were falling thick outside. I wrapped myself in a blanket and tried to relax, but then I heard it. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my door. My heart raced, but I brushed it off as the old house settling. But the sound came back. They were louder this time. It felt like someone was pacing back and forth. My mind raced. Maybe it was just my imagination, but unease crept in. I tried to focus on my graphic design work, but those footsteps would always break my concentration. I felt cold, even under my blanket. The nights went by, and the footsteps returned, like a routine I couldn't understand. Then came the knocks. They were soft at first, but grew more persistent. I stared at the door, my heart pounding. I looked through the peephole, but there was nothing. I opened the door, just a crack. The hallway was empty. I shook my head. I couldn't explain why I felt so anxious, but something was off. I felt it in my bones. Little things started happening. My books were rearranged on the shelf. I didn't remember moving them. My laptop would shut down suddenly, right in the middle of my work. Maybe I was just forgetful. But a nagging feeling grew in my gut. One night I was getting ready for bed when I heard my name. Emily. It was clear as day coming from the hallway. I froze. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I listened closely for more sounds. Nothing. I was alone. Or at least I thought I was. Was it my imagination? Maybe a dream. But I knew I was awake. I didn't sleep well that night. It felt like the shadows were darker, and every creak made my heart race. I wished I had never moved in. Things felt unsettled. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lingering, watching me. Then, late one night, I was jolted awake. I heard the footsteps again, and this time they were closer to my door. I didn't move. I listened, gripping my blanket tightly. I was terrified, and then the worst happened. I heard my name again, softer, but real. Emily. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to the door, not knowing what to expect. A shadow slipped past the crack under the door. I felt frozen. I still don't understand what happened during those winter nights. Maybe it was all in my head, or maybe something more was there in that old house waiting to reveal itself. I don't know, but I haven't stopped thinking about it. The following day I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to drown out my anxiety with work, but each notification from my laptop felt like an invitation to jump. So I decided I needed a distraction that didn't involve sitting alone in my apartment. I headed to the coffee shop below. The warm smell of roasting beans greeted me, and I settled into my usual corner. I flipped through a design magazine but couldn't absorb a single word. My thoughts kept drifting back to last night. "That was strange, huh?" Jenna, the barista, said as she passed by. She looked curious about how I was holding up after my miserable night. I forced a smile, but I couldn't muster the energy to engage. "Yeah," I replied, staring into my cup. She put 2 steaming mugs of coffee down in front of me. "On the house. I figured a girl like you could use it," she said, offering me a sympathetic smile. I appreciated it, but felt more anxious beneath her gaze. As I took a sip, I noticed a group of people at the other end of the cafe whispering with an air of secrecy. One of them glanced over at me, then turned away quickly. My stomach churned with unease. I knew that feeling, like the world was closing in or something was brewing under the surface. I excused myself and walked toward the restroom for a breather. On my way back, I overheard snippets of their conversation. "That girl, it's not safe," one of them said. I froze, caught between curiosity and dread. What were they talking about? I hurried back to the table and tried to act casual, but my mind raced. Every time I thought about those footsteps, my name being called, it felt like a warning. Later, when I returned to my apartment, I was determined to confront whatever it was. I took a deep breath and called out into the hallway. "Is someone there?" My voice wavered, but I pushed through. If you want to talk, I'm here. Silence. I waited, my heart hammering in my chest. Then, just as I was about to write it off, I heard a soft tapping. My breath hitched as I followed the sound toward the back of the hall. It was the sound of fingers rapping on the wall, one knock after another, like a conversation being had without words. "Hello?" I managed to call out, my voice barely above a whisper. The tapping stopped, replaced with a strangled silence that stretched out too long, and then, as if in answer, a door creaked behind me. I spun around, heart racing. It was the door to the storage room. I had never used that door and it was always locked. But now it slowly swung open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. My gut screamed at me to run, but something compelled me to step closer. That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the back of the room, just out of reach of the light. It felt frozen in place, waiting. I took an involuntary step back, and the door slammed shut. My breath caught and I turned to bolt for my apartment. I had to get out. But before I could, a whisper filled the air, chilling me to the bone. "Emily, come back." I stumbled, panic clawing at my throat. There was no doubt now, I wasn't truly alone. Something was there, and it was calling me. I was still reeling from that whisper when I stumbled into my living room, breathless and shivering. My head raced with thoughts. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. Had I really just heard my name? Was I losing it? I wasn't sure what to do. I paced in front of the window, the cold from the glass creeping into my skin. I needed to talk to someone, show I wasn't alone in this chaos. So with shaky hands, I grabbed my phone and called Jenna. Maybe the barista could help me make sense of the noise I'd heard, or at least distract me from the dread pooling in my stomach. When she answered, I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Hey Jenna, it's me, My words faltered. What was I even going to say? I could hardly tell her I had an eerie encounter. I opted for something simpler. "Can we talk? I'm feeling a bit off tonight." "Oh, of course, want to meet up? I get off in half an hour." "Yeah, that sounds great," I replied, grateful for the invitation. I hung up and took a moment to regroup. I went into the kitchen and splashed cold water on my face. As I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. My hair was disheveled, and my eyes were wide with fear. Then I caught a flicker of movement in the hallway. My heart dropped again. I stepped closer to the door, making sure I wasn't imagining things. The dim light barely illuminated the space. I waited, but nothing happened. My mind raced with possibilities. Great, now I was jumping at shadows. But then a familiar soft tapping echoed again, this time closer, almost urgent. I backed away, heart racing as I considered the implications. I thought about the group in the cafe, the whispers about me not being safe. Their warning danced in my mind. Were they talking about this thing? This presence? I turned to grab my phone and text Jenna, but before I could type a single word, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I see you." Cold dread washed over me as I stared at the screen. I had never given my number to anyone I didn't trust. Who was this? My instinct was to run to the door and lock it, but I felt frozen. Just then, the tapping intensified. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a choked gasp. Something behind me shifted again. I slowly turned to face the dark hallway, knowing I should run, yet feeling like I couldn't move. When I finally managed to break free from my paralysis, I sprinted toward the front door. I fumbled to unlock it, my fingers shaking uncontrollably. I had to get out. I pushed the door open and almost collided with Jenna, who was standing on my doorstep, eyes wide with concern. "Emily, I felt a vibe out here. What's going on?" she asked, scanning my face. My panic must have been palpable. I heard noises. "Something's not right," I stammered. Before I could explain further, the lights flickered. The sound of footsteps echoed throughout the hall, and just like that, the door slammed shut behind Jenna. The air turned heavy, and I turned to face whatever was waiting for me in the darkness behind us. The silence after the door slammed felt thick, suffocating. I glanced back at Jenna, who looked equally bewildered. The flashlight from her phone cast a shaky beam into the hallway, revealing only shadows. My gut twisted. I could feel something watching us. "Emily, what's happening?" she whispered, stepping closer to me. The urgency in her voice broke through my fear. "A presence. I heard it before you came," I managed to say, my mind racing to make sense of what I was feeling. Before Jenna could respond, we heard it again, a low, raspy voice, barely a whisper coming from the dark. "Let me in." Jenna flinched, her eyes wide. "What was that?" "I don't know," I said, panic creeping in again. I moved toward the hallway trying to think. I couldn't just stand there. "We need to check it out." "You're not serious," Jenna's voice squeaked. "What if there's someone in here? We can't just stay here, we have to face this," I insisted, though my own voice felt weak. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a baseball bat from the corner where I'd always kept it for protection. "Stay close," I said, though I could see fear reflected in Jenna's eyes. As we crept down the hallway, the sound grew louder. It wasn't just whispers anymore. It felt like someone was trying to form words. "Emily, come out. Did you hear that?" I asked, glancing at Jenna. She nodded, looking terrified but determined. With each step, the air thickened, and I could almost feel the weight of the unseen force pressing against us. The lights flickered overhead, adding to my unease. I swung the bat slightly, my grip tightening. "Show yourself," I called out, refusing to back down. But the response was chilling. The laughter of a child echoed, sharp and mocking. It sent shivers down my spine. I knew I had to protect Jenna and myself, but every instinct urged me to flee. "Do we keep going?" Jenna's voice shook, and I could tell she wanted to leave. But we'd already crossed a line. Turning back felt like a death sentence. We approached the dimly lit living room. I felt an odd pull toward the window. Something compelled me to look outside, and I felt desperate to escape the growing tension behind us. But when we reached the window, the eerie feeling heightened. There, in the reflection of the glass, I saw a figure standing behind us, a small silhouette, its face obscured in darkness. I spun around, bat raised, but there was nothing. Just the empty air swirling with the remnants of those shadows. "Jenna!" I turned back, breath catching in my throat, but she was no longer beside me. Panic shot through me. "Jenna!" I shouted, but my voice bounced off the walls, empty and echoing. Then, from somewhere deep in the hall, I heard her gasp. "Emily, help!" Before I could react, the lights went out completely. Everything plunged into darkness. I felt my heart race. The whispers returned, louder, all around me. "Come play. Come out." I stood frozen, trying to fight the overwhelming urge to run. I had to find Jenna. I couldn't let that thing take her or me. In the pitch black, I took one shaky step forward, focusing on the direction of her voice. Whatever was in this house was not done with us yet. I forced myself to move, feeling my way down the hall. Each step was tentative. I stretched my arm out, hoping to find the wall. My fingers brushed against the cold surface, grounding me. "Jenna!" I called again, panic rising in my throat. My voice echoed back unanswered. I couldn't just stand here in the dark. I felt my way toward the living room, retracing our steps. "Emily!" Her voice was closer now, but still faint, as though she was far away. "I'm over here." I rushed toward the sound, relief flooding me momentarily. But before I reached her, I felt a sudden draft. It whispered through the hallway, stirring the air around me, chilling me to the bone. Then I heard it. A soft giggle, light and innocent, but in this context it filled me with dread. "Jenna, help me." Her voice was now strained, almost pleading. I hurried forward, desperate to reach her. Just as I entered the living room, a flicker of light cut through the darkness for a brief moment. I saw her standing by the far wall, her face pale and wide-eyed. I opened my mouth to call to her again, but that's when I noticed it. A shadow loomed behind her, stretching across the floor, It tugged at my insides like a puppet on strings, demanding my attention. My heart raced, and I raised the bat, prepared to defend her. "Get away from her!" I shouted, my voice drowning in fear. The shadow pulsed, rippling as if it had a life of its own. In the next moment, the light went out again, plunging us back into darkness. I felt a rush of wind, stronger this time, sweeping through the room, rattling the furniture. Jenna's gasp was lost in the chaos. I stumbled, feeling around for her, my hand finally catching her wrist. "Let's go," I said, pulling her toward the front door. "We need to get out." But before we could move, the child's laughter returned, echoing around us like a ghostly choir. "Stay and play," it taunted. The shadow twitched and danced, looming closer. "Emily, it's right there," Jenna shouted, her voice filled with terror. I turned to face the source of her fear, the ball of darkness pressing against us like a wall. "I won't let it take you," I shouted, swinging the bat wildly. But it passed through the shadow like hitting smoke. Panic surged in my veins. I was out of options. "Jenna, follow me." I pulled her again, but suddenly something cold gripped my ankle. I looked down to see tendrils of darkness twisting around my legs, pulling me back into the room. "Emily!" Jenna screamed, struggling to hold on to me. I fought against the darkness, desperate to break free as it climbed higher. "Hold on!" I yelled, trying to inch away. The laughter grew louder, clear and sharp now, surrounding us. Then just as I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, I heard a voice, one that was not raspy but sweet and melodic. "Let her go." Everything froze. The shadow hesitated, its grip loosening just enough for me to pull away. I blinked and looked around, searching for the source of the voice. But as the chilling laugh dissipated, the room began to chill. I felt the presence again, the pressure of something watching. Whatever it was, it had no intention of leaving us alone. As the darkness receded slightly, my heart sank when I saw the silhouette again, this time not behind me, but standing in front of the window. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a figure, clearly defined with familiar features. "Emily," it breathed. I froze, recognizing the face as one from my past. Not just any face, but someone I had lost a long time ago. My breath caught, fear mixing with confusion. What was happening? "Emily, we need to go," Jenna shouted, pulling me back to reality. I blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving behind only whispering echoes. The dark shadow still lingered, reforming into something that demanded attention. But Jenna's grip kept me grounded. "Let's find a way out," I said, my voice steadier now, fueled by adrenaline. Whatever was in this house wanted us, and I wasn't about to let it win. As we moved toward the door, I felt a sudden tug at my heart. I glanced back fleetingly, half expecting to see it again. But nothing, yet a dreadful thought whispered in my mind. What if the darkness had other plans? But I dismissed it. We had to keep going. But as we crossed the threshold into the hallway, the lights flashed on again, and I stopped. That's when I saw it. A clear message written on the wall in letters that glowed faintly. "Playtime is not over." My blood ran cold. What did it want from us? I turned to Jenna. Now we really have to run. We sprinted down the hall, the message on the wall seared into my mind. Playtime is not over. I could almost hear it taunting us, a sick invitation to remain in the nightmare. "Emily, which way?" Jenna's voice trembled beside me, panic creeping back in. I glanced over my shoulder. The shadow shifted, slinking toward us, reminding me it was still very much present. "This way," I said, veering to the left where the kitchen lay, hoping the back door was unlocked. I flung open the door, relief washing over me when the knob turned easily. But the moment I stepped inside, a frigid gust swept through, extinguishing the flickering lights. My heart pounded furiously, and I fumbled for the light switch. The kitchen remained dark, an unsettling feeling crawling across my skin. "Where are you?" Jenna whispered, sounding small and afraid. "I'm here." I reached out, my hand finding her arm. We need to stick together. I steadied myself. There was no time for despair. I took a breath, steadying my trembling hands. Let's see if we can find something to defend ourselves. I felt around the countertop, my fingers brushing against pots and pans. Then I stopped, metallic and cold. A set of knives sat in their block, gleaming even in the dark. Not ideal, but it could work. I yanked the largest knife free, testing its weight in my hand. It felt solid, real. Emily, look! Jenna's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I shifted toward her. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of light emanated from the living room. Not the overheads that had been flickering erratically, but a steady glow. I swallowed hard. Should we check it out? She asked, her eyes wide. I hesitated, caught between the fear of the unknown and the instinct to flee. But we didn't have a choice. Yes, let's go, I said, feeling the knife tightened firmly in my grip. As we crept toward the living room, the darkness seemed to close in around us. The glow became brighter, almost luring us in. I could hear my heartbeat loud in my ears, drowning out everything else, even Jenna's slight breaths beside me. When we reached the entrance, I paused, peeking around the corner. The light filled the room, casting long shadows that twisted and danced. And then I saw it. The old television, which hadn't worked in years, flickered to life, showing static-filled images of a children's party. Balloons, smiling faces, and laughter. But something felt terribly wrong. The scene was distorted, the children's mouths moving, but no sound came through. Emily, we have to leave, Jenna urged, her voice trembling. I nodded, torn between the horror unfolding in front of us and the palpable pull of the shadows lurking just outside of the light. Yeah, but we need to be careful. Just then, the static shifted, and the screen zoomed in on a face. It was a child's face, eyes wide open, excited in a way that sent chills down my spine. The TV flickered, the room shifted, and in that moment a realization struck me hard. The figure I had seen earlier was connected to this. I frowned, grappling with the growing sense of dread and recognition. Jenna, what if this is all a game? What if we've been brought here on purpose? Before she could respond, the television ominously buzzed, its glow waning. The laughter from before returned, echoing around the room. Let's go, I shouted, yanking Jenna back and sprinting for the hallway again. But as we turned, the air thickened, pressing in around us like hands ready to grip. The laughter transformed into a sharp scream that echoed in my head. And then, in the midst of that chaos, I heard another voice. A child's voice, sweet yet sinister, whispering, "Playtime is just beginning." The door slammed shut, trapping us in darkness once more. My heart raced. Whatever this was, it was still coming for us. I gripped the knife tighter and prepared for the fight of my life. The darkness closed in around us, hushed and suffocating. I felt Jenna's hand grasp mine tightly as if she feared being swallowed whole. The echo of the child's voice lingered in my ears. My breath quickened. "Do you hear that?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely louder than a flutter. I nodded, straining to pick up on any sound over the pounding in my chest. The laughter had disappeared, replaced by a heavy silence, thick with tension. Suddenly the walls seemed to pulse with noise. Was it the house creaking or something else? The sound was faint, like whispers, too quiet to make out, but definitely there. "Emily, I don't like this," she said, and I could hear the quiver in her voice. "Me neither," I replied. My instinct screamed at me to run. I stepped back, retreating from the living room. "We need to find a way out. Let's try through the front door." As I moved forward, the knife felt cold and heavy in my grip, a reminder of our precarious situation. We crossed the threshold back into the hallway, only to find the back door had vanished. "No, no, no," I muttered under my breath. "It can't be. There has to be another way." Panic clawed at my throat. I turned to Jenna, her face pale and stricken. "We're trapped," she whispered. My heart sank. There had to be some kind of escape. Frantically, I scanned around us for any signs of a way out, my eyes landing on a closet door down the hall. Without thinking, I grabbed Jenna by the wrist and pulled her along with me. Let's check there, I said, hoping for anything that could help. We reached the closet, and with a swift motion I yanked the door open. Clothes hung from the shelves, but it was dark inside, darker than the hallway. As I poked my head inside, my heart raced. Just some old coats, I mumbled, stepping back slightly. But then a glimmer caught my eye. I leaned closer, reaching out. It was a small ornate box tucked away behind the hangings. Jenna, look. I opened it, revealing a delicate string of colorful vintage beads. What is that? She asked. I don't know, I admitted, holding the beads in my palm. They felt warm, almost comforting. But as I turned them over, a chill crept up my spine. The last bead glowed faintly, just like the flickering from the TV. I glanced back down the hallway, recalling the garbled faces of those children and their laughter. Emily, please, we need to move, Jenna insisted, glancing nervously toward the living room. Before I could respond, the lights flickered again and a cold draft swept through the hallway. We both froze, hearts in sync, thudding against our chests. The whispering was back, rising louder like a choir of children, chanting something I couldn't understand. Now, Jenna urged, breaking the spell. We turned to run, clutching the beads. But then, the walls shuddered, and I swore I saw shadows blur at the edge of my vision. I stumbled to regain my balance. What's happening? Jenna cried out, her grip tightening on mine. The laughter escalated into screams. Bellowing voices filled the air around us. I could feel the box slip slightly from my grasp, as if it wanted to pull away. Stay close, I shouted, but the darkness roared louder. The light flickered, and suddenly the memories began to flood back. Images of the party played in my mind. The faces, the voices, and the invitation to play. I realized now that they wanted more than just participants. There was a price. And with that, all at once, the world went dark again. The whispers grew deafening, swirling in a tempest of sound, and I found myself lost, struggling against the unseen forces. We were not just in a game. We were caught in a twisted design meant to trap us forever. I didn't know how much time had passed. I couldn't hear Jenna breathing any longer. With fear gripping my heart, I whispered into the void. We can't let them win. A sudden realization struck me like an electric shock. The beads. Could they provide a way out? But before I could react, a new voice chimed in, clear and vibrant. Ready or not, here we come. I felt the shadows shift dangerously close and my mind went blank. The chase was on. I took a shaky breath, the fear in my chest becoming a fireball of adrenaline. The voice echoed around us, wrapping us in a creeping dread. Instinct kicked in and I rushed forward, dragging Jenna with me. Where do we go? She yelled over the noise. I didn't have an answer. The hallway twisted with each step, a maze of darkened corners and oppressive shadows. Just run, I shouted back as I pulled her toward the living room, hoping to find some sign of an exit. The laughter had transformed into a frantic howling, pushing us forward yet holding us captive. We burst into the living room, my heart racing. The air felt thicker here, almost alive, and I froze at the sight of the swirling shadows in the corners. They danced like children, taunting us, their laughter mocking our fear. The flickering TV displayed distorted images, faces without bodies, eyes wide and pleading. Emily! Jenna's voice broke through my reverie. I turned to see her point at something near the fireplace. There, half hidden beneath the mantel, lay an iron fireplace poker. Good eye, I cried out and dashed toward it. My fingers wrapped around the cold metal and it steadied me. It wasn't much, but it felt like a weapon against the unseen. Now what? Jenna asked, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an exit that wasn't there. A low whisper tickled my ears. Find us. Play with us. It was a haunting melody, slipping through my thoughts. If they wanted to play, then maybe I could use that. We can outsmart them, I said slowly, glancing back at the TV. What if we give them what they want? What do you mean? She asked, confusion edging her voice. Those beads. They must mean something. If we use them, maybe we can summon whatever they want. It wasn't a solid plan, but desperation pushed me onward. Are you sure? Jenna said, but there was desperation in her voice too. We don't have a choice. I reached for the ornate box, clutching the beads tightly. As I held them out, the shadows danced closer, attention shifting to the glimmers of color. Suddenly, the laughter turned into chaos, voices overlapping and growing louder. Play, play, they chanted like a mantra, urging us to join their twisted game. What do? I whispered to myself, unsure if I should throw the beads or hold on to them for protection. Just do it, Jenna screamed, her face blanched with fear. With a deep breath, I hurled the beads into the air. They scattered like marbles, glimmering as they fell to the ground. I expected a reaction, something explosive perhaps. But instead, the shadows paused, swirling curiously around the scattered beads. Look, Jenna shouted, pointing at the ground where the beads had landed. The shadows pulsed and pulled, forming shapes I couldn't quite make out. They concentrated around the beads, swirling faster, blurring into one another, drawing closer to us. But what does that mean? I muttered, panic seeping in as I realized they weren't retreating. The shadows morphed into something solid. Figures began to emerge from the darkness, grotesque and familiar, their faces twisted in the same glee as the children I saw on the TV. They're coming, Jenna cried out, backing away. That's when I froze, the realization washing over me. They're not just playing, I stammered. They want us to join them. The shadows advanced, and all at once, everything went silent. I could feel the beads slipping through my fingers as I fell backward, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind me, the TV flickered ominously. I glanced at it just in time to see the last glimmer of the children's faces twist into a sinister smile. And then, the lights cut out completely. Emily! Jenna screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the encroaching darkness. I could sense them closing in. The game was far from over, and I was about to find out how high the stakes really were. The darkness curled around us like a living thing. I struggled to find my footing, breath shallow and quick. Jenna's voice felt miles away, swallowed by the gloom. I stood, poker gripped tightly in my fist, scanning the room for any sign of where the shadows might strike from next. Jenna! I called, my voice shaky. I could barely see her outline against the blackness. Where are you? I'm here, she replied, her voice trembling. What do we do? The shadows seemed to breathe, shifting and twitching, their forms barely distinguishable. I felt their eyes on me, if they had eyes, waiting. Hungry. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken threats. I couldn't just stand there. Let's try to make our way to the front door, I suggested, forcing a plan into my mind. If we can just get outside. A low rumble echoed, a sound that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The laugh was back, now low and menacing. Play with us. It dripped like poison. Emily. Jenna's voice came through like a beacon. Please. I took a step forward, then another, testing the ground. The weight of unseen gazes pressed against my skin. I swallowed hard, unsure if moving toward the source of the voices was bravery or madness. Just then, an icy gust rushed through, strong enough to almost knock me down. It seemed to pull me toward the television. The screen glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows of its own on the walls. I hesitated, caught between moving closer or running. There's something there, Jenna shouted, pointing at the TV. Look. I turned my gaze and saw it, a figure emerging from the screen. It floated as though underwater, distorted and wavy, struggling to break free from whatever kept it trapped inside. I clenched my fists. Whatever that was, it wanted out. Do you see that? I whispered. It's more than just shadows. It doesn't matter, we need to get out, Jenna said, urgency lacing her tone. But before I could respond, the figure shifted and suddenly it lunged toward the glass, its mouth stretching into a wide grin. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. Open the door, I shouted, pointing toward the exit. Panic surged through me, but I couldn't let it consume my actions. Jenna mustered her courage and started toward the door. As she reached for the knob, the shadows thickened again, coiling around her feet. No! I yelled as I charged forward, swinging the poker in an instinctive motion. The metal struck the ground, producing a clang that rang out against the silence, and for a brief moment the shadows retreated with a hiss. But then they surged back, angrier than ever. My heart raced. "Jenna, hurry!" I looked back at the ghostly figure now fully emerged, the outline blurring and shifting. It let out a chilling laughter, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Don't go yet. Emily!" For a moment, her grip faltered, caught between fear and the doorknob. I could feel the pressure building against us from all sides, threatening to constrict us in total darkness. And that's when I saw it. A flash of color, vibrant beads swirling on the floor, pulling me in their direction. But the shadows were pushing back. It was impossible to tell if the beads were our salvation or another trap. In that moment, I knew the stakes weren't just our lives. The whispers grew louder, echoing in my mind. "Once you play, you can never leave." "Grab the beads," I shouted, but doubt seeped in. I didn't know what would happen if I reached out for them. The figure lunged again, its maw opening in a grotesque scream. Time slowed. I had to choose, and life as I knew it hung in the balance. I lunged for the beads, heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I felt my fingers wrap around the colorful strand. The moment I pulled it toward me, the world shifted. The shadows recoiled, their howls swirling around us like a blusterous wind, echoing my own fear. I glanced at Jenna, who was still struggling against the creeping darkness binding her feet. "Jenna, the beads!" I cried, desperation igniting a fierce determination within me. I waved the string in front of the shadows, the light reflecting off its glossy surface. "I think they want this." With one final surge of adrenaline, I rushed to her side, gripping the poker tightly with my other hand. "On three, we pull away. Get ready." She nodded, her eyes wild with a mixture of fear and hope. 1, 2, 3. We yanked back in unison, me pulling on the beads, her pulling free from the dark tendrils wrapping around her. In that split second, light erupted from the beads. An ethereal glow filled the room, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The shadows hissed and writhed as if scalded by the light, some recoiling into a corner and others retreating into the walls. "Keep it close!" Jenna shouted, and somehow her voice reached me over the chaos engulfing us. I clutched the beads tightly, feeling their warmth seep into my skin, even as the air chilled around us. I could see the ghostly figure in the TV, a child's face with a wide grin, begin to falter, as if the light was burning away its tether to this realm. It screeched again, and for a moment I felt the full weight of hopelessness press on my chest. This thing was connected to everything, to why we were trapped. But I couldn't let fear control me any longer. "Let's go," I shouted, dragging Jenna toward the door. The moment we stepped forward, the figure lunged and shadows whipped around us like a tempest. I swung the poker, the metal glinting in the wavering light, and watched as it struck out at the darkness, dispersing some of the swirling tendrils away from our path. The light from the beads pulsed around us as if urging us forward. My heart raced. "We can make it. Just keep moving." We barreled toward the front door, the shadows hollering, their whispers reaching a crescendo. "You belong to us. Playtime can never end." "No!" I screamed, summoning whatever strength was left within me. "We're done playing." With one final yank, I turned the doorknob. It felt locked from the inside, but the light from the beads surged around me, sparking an electrical current of hope. Bracing myself against the door, I flung it open with every ounce of willpower I had. We burst out into the night, the chill air hitting us like a wall. I fell forward into the blackness, pulling Jenna with me. We hit the ground and rolled to a stop, breathless and shaken. The shadows swirled behind us but couldn't follow, recoiling at the doorframe. I looked back, gasping as a final wailing scream filled the air, echoing off the walls of that cursed house. "You'll come back. You'll always come back." As I lay there staring up at the stars, a mix of relief and dread washed over me. We had escaped, but the way the shadows had called to me, the way they danced and whispered. I felt a lingering weight in my chest, an unsettling sensation that the game wasn't really over. I turned to Jenna, who was still catching her breath, shaken but alive. "Did we really get away?" she whispered, and I could see disbelief knitted within her eyes. "I think so," I replied, my voice feeling thin. "But what was it? Why did it want us?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "But we can't go back there. Not ever." We sat there holding on to one another, battered by fear yet grateful for survival. But deep inside, the questions remained. Was it truly over? Or would the darkness rise again, waiting for us, biding its time like something lurking in the corners of our minds? As tears trickled down our cheeks, I realized it had changed me. It had left scars, familiar shapes in the shadows of my thoughts. And while I would move on, the echoes of that sinister laughter would be etched in my soul, forever reminding me that even in the light, darkness can quietly persist, lurking just out of sight, whispering the words, "Playtime is not over.